If you have a Windows computer and you want to see if you're ready to install SQL Server, just check out this video. We'll show you all the tips and all the gotchas before you even begin. First of all, you're going to need the SQL Server software. If you're doing this on a home computer, one of two recommended ways is you can get the free limited version of SQL Server 2008, known as SQL Server Express, from the internet, or you can pay up to about $50 to get your very own SQL Server 2008 Developer Edition shipped to you on a DVD. If you're planning on going far with SQL Server and you want it to do everything you can throw at it, I highly recommend you spend the $50 and get the SQL Developer Edition. For the installs in this video, we'll assume you have the install DVD in hand. How about your system? Do you have the right hardware ready to install SQL Server? And do you have the right software ready to install SQL Server? There are different minimums and recommendations you'll run across, but basically if you have about a half a gig of memory, you're ready for SQL Express, and if you have a gig or more, you're ready for almost any version of SQL 2008. Here we have Windows XP Service Pack 2, which is fully capable of running SQL Server 2008. SQL Server 2008 has some other software requirements. It needs .NET 3.5 or higher in order to run. Now, Windows XP Service Pack 2 has .NET, but some might have versions older than .NET 3.5. So as I pop in the CD, it says I need to install 3.5. I accept this and continue with the installation. Now, there are other requirements, and I'm missing one item which I'll show you in a little bit. I'll show you what it does and how to get around it. And here it is. Not all versions of Windows XP have Windows Installer 3.1. Now, Windows XP can run Windows Installer 3.1 if you download and install this in order to get everything ready. At this point, you should exit and reboot. Now we're back. Let's go find Windows Installer 3.1 and download it. Go to any search engine and look for Windows Installer 3.1. You get a bunch of search results. Look for this link and click on it. Now if you scroll to the bottom, you see this link here. Click it and choose Run. It doesn't take too long because it's only 2.5 megabytes. Click Run again and the installation starts up. Click the Next button. If you want to continue, you will need to accept the User License Agreement. It won't take very long for the install to complete. Now the Windows Installer 3.1 process should not be running anymore since it's done. You want to make sure it's done before starting to install SQL Server 2008. Just for safe measure, please perform another reboot, even though it doesn't ask for it. At this point, you want the SQL Server 2008 install to start again. You can either take the DVD out and slap it back in, or you can go straight to the DVD in your Windows Explorer and search for the setup.exe and double-click it. This time, with the Windows Installer 3.1 in place, it will earnestly upgrade your .NET framework to version 3.5. In order to continue, you are required to accept the licensing agreement, and you can read this by scrolling through all the words, and to accept the terms, you can do so by clicking the first radio button and click Install. Now this is going to take a little bit of time. You might notice if you look at my clock in the lower right corner, the minutes are going to fly by a little faster as I take out some of the frames that are time-consuming. Once done, as you see on your screen, you have the .NET 3.5 framework installed. If the installer finds anything else that is necessary before continuing with the SQL Server installation, it will ask you to agree, click Next, follow the steps, and then you're almost to the point where you get to do the real SQL Server install. And you've earned yourself another reboot. After the reboot, it takes about a minute, but this window pops up with your planning, installation, and maintenance choices. Instead of clicking Planning, let's click straight to Installation, and let's take this first one. Install SQL as a standalone with all its features. It takes a little time to go through this, but once you're through, you're at the Setup Support Rules. You can hit Details to see all the passing marks. Then hit OK. Now if you've got the DVD, you need to type in the DVD key. Mine was purchased online and came with the box, but it's only for me, so let's blur this out and hit the Next button. Okay, you got your key, ready to do business. Let's look at the agreement, read through the agreement, and if you like what it says, you can accept the terms. Hit the Next button and continue with the install. Things are pretty straightforward where you wait and hit Next until you get to this screen. Some of these checkboxes have entire books around just that subject matter. For the purpose of this book, we're going to need the Database Services Engine, which does all the data management, storage, and calculations for SQL. And we're going to need the user interface that talks to the Database Services Engine by checking these two boxes. After this, you're going to have long waits with few stages where you're hitting Next just to verify you want to continue. Then you get to the security section of the install, which is seen here. SQL Server wants to know a couple of things. First off, what accounts are our SQL services going to use? Well, a handy one that's right here from the drop-down is the NT Authority system. Notice it filled in the NT Authority system for all service accounts. The next security question is, who is going to have full administrative access of the SQL Server? Often the person installing it will need this, so SQL Server has this Add Current User button. If you click that, it'll add the user you're logged in as while doing the install. There. My computer and username appear. After hitting Next 2 more times, you will eventually get to the list of choices that shows what you have selected. Click Next again, and this will take a little more time to install. Hit Next at 12:54 p.m. Let's see what time this finishes. On this machine with 1 GB of RAM, it finished at 1:10 p.m. If you do the math, you see it took about 15 minutes to do that final stage. Now you get a supplemental information report of everything that was installed. Click Close. Your SQL Server install is now complete. Want to see what you've done? Notice that on your Start menu, Programs has listed a new program. Select SQL Server 2008, select SQL Server Management Studio, and the SQL Server user interface starts up.